Olá, boa noite a todos. Espero que todos estejam bem e com saúde. É um grande prazer tê-los aqui representando o Comitê de Transformação Digital da SPE. Esse grupo, eu vou pedir que o Max projete o nosso time de profissionais especializados no segmento, liderados pelo Farid Shecaira e pela Ana Paula Lomon. Time de profissionais que envolvem desde os grandes usuários, as empresas de óleo e gás, também os seus fornecedores, inclui também a academia, e cujo objetivo é compartilhar com esse público o que tem acontecido no nosso segmento em termos de transformação digital. Esse nome já está um pouco batido, porque grande parte das empresas já estão transformadas em pleno uso das ferramentas, mas algumas sutilezas importantes que permitem acelerar essa transformação serão tratadas aqui hoje. Nós falaremos com base na experiência de dois grandes, praticamente criadores do fórum chamado OSDU, que faz parte do Open Group. O Open Group, para a gente ter um background do que significa, é um grupo que foi criado por usuários sem a intervenção de fornecedores. E o que está por trás disso? Normalmente, os grandes ditames de tecnologia vêm com grandes empresas que fizeram grandes investimentos em tecnologia e depois praticamente jogam isso no mercado para os seus usuários, e alguns deles se sentem, após adotarem uma certa tecnologia, amarrados a elas para sempre. O Open Group, então, foi criado por usuários que, ao invés de simplesmente aceitarem uma tecnologia, fizeram o inverso e jogaram para o mercado os seus desejos, as suas dores, as suas vontades. O Open Group, então, se congregam no Open Group os grupos de trabalho, que eles chamam de Working Groups, onde esses usuários discutem temas que são suas dores principais. Esses Working Groups, com o tempo, se transformam em fórum, e esses fóruns criam documentações que partem do princípio de serem totalmente abertas, totalmente agnósticas, e que permitam que todos adotem e multipliquem o seu uso. Se a gente perguntar para alguém do Open Group, o que vocês fazem? Eles diriam o seguinte: tudo que fazemos é permitir que as organizações que utilizam a tecnologia da informação consigam fazer as coisas mais rápidas, com recursos corretos, e eliminando o máximo de retrabalho. Ou seja, o que eu desenvolvo que possa ser aplicado no ambiente ou na infraestrutura do fornecedor A pode migrar para B, C ou D, ou seja, a escolha é livre. E além disso, se eu pego os meus dados e aplico num ecossistema de um fornecedor A, B ou C, independente da infraestrutura, eu também posso fazer uma migração entre todos eles. Por isso que o título da nossa conversa de hoje é justamente o OSDU, um habilitador para a transformação digital. O que está por trás disso? Toda transformação digital começa com dados. A indústria de óleo e gás, desde a sísmica, tem sido, classicamente, uma das maiores geradoras de dados. E esses dados normalmente ficavam armazenados nos que a gente chama, classicamente, de diferentes silos. E, na realidade, são de domínio do usuário. Hoje em dia, é possível que esses dados, com a queda do custo do seu processamento, a possibilidade de uso de nuvem, várias nuvens públicas, nuvens híbridas, as chamadas intelligent clouds também, tratar esses dados e tirar proveito deles. Então, as empresas de óleo e gás têm dito que o novo ouro não é mais o petróleo, mas os dados que estão atrelados a essa indústria. Para falar com a gente hoje, para bater esse papo conosco, nós trouxemos aqui, e já de antemão agradecemos a presença deles, duas figuras que são ícones na formação do SDU. Foram eles que pela primeira vez se reuniram e disseram: que tal a gente propor algo totalmente aberto quando a gente trata de dados de subsuperfície, que é a origem de toda a grande empresa de petróleo. Sem conhecer os meus reservatórios, não existe o resto da cadeia. Essas duas feras, esses dois ícones, esses dois gurus que eu vou apresentar para vocês, um deles é da Shell, é o senhor Johan Krebs. Agradeço aqui publicamente em português, depois farei em inglês, a gentileza, porque o Johan Krebs, que é um vice-presidente de TI, de inovação em TI da Shell e gerente-geral das chamadas tecnologias digitais emergentes, também para o grupo anglo-saxônico Shell, ele está nesse momento em Amsterdã, ou seja, ele está 5 horas à frente. Nós estamos aqui às 6 horas e 6 minutos, ele está lá perto da meia-noite, às 11 horas e 6 minutos. Tá? A finalidade dele, o objetivo principal dele dentro da organização é montar futuras estratégias para manter a competitividade do grupo Shell. Tá? Como parte desses papéis, ele está sempre aberto a novas tecnologias e, sem desmerecer, grande contato com as startups. Essas são as grandes criadoras de tecnologias para o futuro. Como eu disse, ele é baseado em Amsterdã e ele já teve vários papéis na Shell, inclusive na definição de todas as arquiteturas de TI do grupo Shell. Ele também participou de posições em diferentes países e conhece muito bem o Brasil, principalmente o Rio de Janeiro. O segundo palestrante, que, em contrapartida, a Shell como usuário e sendo um dos fornecedores, também colaborou muito com a criação do SDU e o conceito de dados abertos, é o Raj Khanna. Ele é o líder de tecnologia empresarial em nuvem, também um advisor super reconhecido, pertence a Schlumberger, contribuindo com o EIP de óleo e gás da Schlumberger há mais de 20 anos, para ser exato, 23 anos. Ele é considerado um dos champions do código aberto e atuou como líder no comitê de gestão de programas, o chamado PMC, para o fórum, para o SDU, fórum SDU, e também para o lançamento de uma das releases do OSDU, que é a chamada release Mercury, que é a release 3, que foi lançada agora em março, recentemente. Tá? A Schlumberger tem tido um papel extremamente relevante para o sucesso da OSDU, pois em 2019 ela abriu o seu ecossistema Delphi como SaaS, como plataforma em nuvem, já totalmente baseada em plataforma em dados abertos. Então, quando vocês ouvirem falar do Delphi da Schlumberger, automaticamente vocês vão ser remetidos à origem do grupo de trabalho da OSDU e hoje Fórum SDU. Agora eu vou chavear para o inglês e so I would like to welcome Mr. Johan Krebs and Raj Khanna. First, Mr. Johan, our deep thanks for both of you that you are in other parts in the world. Mr. Johan is almost sleeping because it's almost midnight over there. And Raj is also laughing because before we start, I was going back to one statement done by our former president, Tancredo Neves, okay? To sleep I have an eternity. So, but let's respect the time. This is two gentlemen, very kind, that are sharing their background and their experience regarding OSDU to us. So I like to call to the stage Mr. Johan Krebs. The stage is yours, Mr. Krebs.
Thank you much. Can I start? Is my slides visible?
Yes.
Are my slides visible? Okay. Thank you much. Good morning. Good afternoon, of course. We're going to talk about OSDU, what it's all about. So I'm first going to talk about OSDU in the general context. What's OSDU coming from? What is it? Who are we? And what are the future plans? So there's an overall story around OSDU. First is, why did we start OSDU a couple of years ago? Really, if you look at the subsurface market, and the people in the audience will know about it, you know that you got in the subsurface space, if you look at exploration, look at wells, you look at development, you got the data and applications are closely interlinked in many different formats. The data is often stored in silos and really in isolation from each other. Metadata, which is information about data, is often not available, and therefore your search facilities are very limited. So it's very hard to find anything back in all these silos. And if we move into a world of digital, and this is all about data, and really also the supporting AI, artificial intelligence, really needs access to a broad sense of data. So that's really where we are today. If you look at a typical oil and gas company in the subsurface space. So we said with OSDU, we really have to put data at the center. So put all the data you can think about, starting in exploration, development, and wells into a single data platform with a single set of APIs, having access to that data from your applications. With all support for metadata, master data. So all the metadata is also there, and over time also full support for real-time data. And the standards are not being managed by an application vendor, but by a forum. I'm going to explain that in a moment. And by putting all the data into a single data platform, accessible via a single set of APIs, you can also exploit AI on top of that data. So OSDU is all about data, putting data at the center. And here it's really the green part and the red part when we talk about the OSDU data platform. So the green part is where we work together under the OSDU data platform. In the center, you see the data platform services. That's really where we store all the data. So all the data is loaded over there. Your exploration data, your structured data, your unstructured data is being loaded by the data ingestion services. So that's where all the data gets from anywhere in the world into the single data platform. And you go to information security, where you have your user authentication based on OpenID Connect and user authorization to see who has access to what data into the single data platform. So the green part, we work together because we do not compete. If I'm from Shell, I do not compete with Petrobras or with ExxonMobil or with Chevron on how we store our data. Yeah? We do compete what data we have, and we do compete how we exploit the data. But how we store the data, how we name the data, we do not compete. That's all about OSDU. It's really that storing of your data, accessing of your data. And OSDU is a system of record. It is not a data warehouse. It's not a data lake. A system of record means it's the master of the data. Data is being kept over there. It's never deleted. It's never deleted. You might also add a new version of data to it. So it's really the master of all your data is in the OSDU data platform, and your application in the gray part will have direct access via the API layer to that data. The gray part means that's where we compete, because lots of people developing applications out there, and what application we decide also gives us the idea about the capabilities of what applications also determine what we can do with that data. So this picture over here is what you find to be installed. A typical operator, so Petrobras we would get a copy of this. Petrobras also actively working and looking into OSDU. Same for Shell, same for any other operator out there. On the left, you also see that normally the OSDU environment is a public cloud-based environment. So the code is available, the implementation is available on Amazon, on Google, on IBM, and on Microsoft cloud environments. But where we have no cloud, at left, like in certain countries in the world, we're not allowed to export the data, so we have to stay in country, and there might be no cloud. We also offer an in-country solution. In the case of Brazil, there are cloud services. We can use a cloud-based environment. So that's the high-level picture of OSDU. So we really talk about the data and all the services around the data. So putting all data in a single data platform, starting with surface and wells. The platform, I'll talk about later, is an open source based platform based on Apache License 2.0. Remember that it's open source means that anybody, whether you're a member of OSDU or not, can propose changes and can kick off a project managed by the project management committee of the OSDU, but you can kick off your own project to develop changes to the common code of the platform. And once tested by the project management committee of OSDU, it will be made available to everybody. So it's open source. Secondly, it's a single set of data definitions. It's the first time in life that everybody who's using OSDU will be using the same set of data definitions. So a well is a well is a well is a well, because we all use the same definitions. Whether you by Petrobras or Shell, whenever we use OSDU data platform, we use the same set of definitions. We're using the APIs to separate the data and the applications, and we're creating a stable platform for software companies. That means company, small company, large company, universities, you name it, can develop applications, and that application can be used by any OSDU data platform, can be purchased by any OSDU data platform owner, and therefore there's now a market for those software companies. They develop the software once and can be used by multiple companies out there. And OSDU is a real service. It's not just a set of standards, it's a real product we can use, we can deploy. We started with OSDU in Shell in 2018, called the Subsurface Data Universe. In Shell, we immediately said we want to make this an industry solution, but it's far better for everybody. And in 2018, September 2018, under the Open Group, we started the OSDU Forum. And you find all about this in www.osduforum.org if you want to know about this. Why in the Open Group? Because we need some sort of legal framework, some framework how companies can work together. Because if lots of companies start working together, they need a framework. Yeah, how to work together, what can you share, what can you not share. Today we have over 200 members being member of OSDU in June 2021. And these members are doing the work. So these members are creating the standards, do all the work to come to the solutions. We issued other releases before, but our current release is release 3, also called now Mercury. It was released on March the 24th, and it really covers exploration, development, and wells on 4 cloud platforms, on Microsoft, on Google, on Amazon, and on IBM. Yeah, so you can go to any of these 4 suppliers and say, please, Mr. Microsoft, please install the OSDU data platform on my Microsoft subscription. Or you go to IBM, do exactly the same. Or you go to Amazon, do exactly the same. Or you go to Google and do exactly the same. So they all offer this OSDU Mercury release as a production release on their platform. And also you have the marketplace out there where the companies can install their applications, for which as an operator you can download the applications as you see fit. And on the right you see a number of the logos out there. Over 200 members out there, all actively involved in the OSDU data platform. So that's where we are today. So we launched a production release of OSDU called Mercury, supporting exploration, development, and wells. And in the middle of last year, we said we're going to extend that strategy. We're going to add to that production to create an integrated upstream environment. We're going to add to that other energy sources like wind, like solar, etc. And we're going to add to that also high-speed streaming real-time environments. And I'll explain that in a moment. So we're creating a single energy for all energy source called an open energy data platform, which is OSDU, which really supports the traditional energy sources and also the newer energy sources, like CCUS or like hydrogen. I'll explain that in a moment. So our aim is now to create this open energy data platform that you see over here. So the blue part over here and the red part over here is the same as the green part and the red part on my previous slide. So the blue part is the OSDU data platform. On the left, you see what we launched on March 24th is exploration, support for exploration, development, and wells. So all the data, exploration, of development, and wells can be loaded inside the OSDU data platform. We're working on the production so that we can also add production, upstream production to this in the second half of the year. And then the data for upstream production data, so your time series data, etc., can be loaded into the same data platform as your exploration, development, and wells data. And in principle, you have then an integrated upstream business because your all data from exploration until production will be loaded into a single data platform under a single set of APIs. And we added to that on the right the new energy sources like solar, like wind farm, etc. And explain in a moment. Again, the data goes into a single data platform. So under the red API layer, you have all the data from your traditional data sources a new data source, a new energy source, into a single data platform. And then on top of that, you see the box with all the colors. Those are the various business applications you can have. The business applications are not part of the scope of Osdu data platform, and you can either develop yourself, you can buy them from third parties, other people can do it for you, etc. And they have different colors because you might be running different platforms, different environments, but they all get their data via the API stack from the Osdu data platform. And remember, the Osdu data platform is open source based and is fully real time. We also are going to add to that streaming real time, i.e. a Kafka engine to get high speed real time data access. And at the bottom you see the word edge. We also are developing an edge capability. If you have an open source edge environment, if you need edge facilities for your drilling or for your wind farm or for your upstream production environment, also that is being made part of Osdu. So that's what we're working towards in this year and next year. We're also adding to that the engineering data. So together with the IOGP, it's most likely you've heard about, we have a joint project to add engineering data. So your piping, your instrumentation, your electrical data into the single data platform. So it'll be added to your Osdu data platform. That means you have then operational data and engineering data into a single data platform. That's really what we're targeting at. So remember this picture. That's really the open energy data platform is what we're targeting at. So we're going to active project to add upstream production to this data platform, and our aim is to have it available sometime in the second half of this year. These are projects. So upstream production in progress. Wind farms, shown in a moment, in progress. We will start solar farm very soon. Hydrogen will start very soon, and same with geothermal. CCUS is in progress, and EDGE is already in progress. These are projects where we really developing the capabilities to make them part of the Osdu data platform. Here's the wind farm. Wind farm, of course, you got onshore and offshore. You see the wind farm at the bottom over here, connected into the Osdu data platform. We're going to use the standards usable in the wind farm business, which is the IEC standards, IEC 61400 standards, and the 81346 standards. These are really the standards applicable in the wind farm business. So we bring the same data, the data from wind farms with the time series data, event data, weather data, and maybe wave data, etc., all into that single Osdu data platform. We do the same for CCUS. We have an active project with CCUS going on with people from the US, from Australia, from Europe, to really develop what kind of data is needed to be stored in Osdu to support the CCUS business. And of course, in the case of CCUS, subsurface data or subsurface structures are very, very important. Your reservoir structures are very important. So that's what we're focusing at. What of the reservoir data is also relevant to a CCUS reservoir. Hydrogen, we still need to kick that off. We're also going to add to this the hydrogen production production data. And it's not a project we kick off in the coming, I would say, in the coming couple of months. And the same with geothermal. So we have all these data sources. Yeah. So bring all these various energy sources, I have to say, oil, gas, wind, solar, into a single Osdu data platform. On top of it, you have a single set of APIs, and on top of which you have your applications. So it's an API-driven environment. Yeah. So I already separate my data from applications, so I can really develop applications for the data below. It's open source based, but fully managed by the Osdu forum. So the Osdu forum sets the standards, not a supplier. Yeah, the Osdu forum and the members of the Osdu forum, the 200 members of the Osdu forum, set the standards, the data definition standards, the data type standards, the API standards, all set by the forum. So if you're a member of the forum, then you have the power to help over there and make that active. Whatever we produce is available to everybody in the market. Whenever we produce a new release, like the Mercury release, is available in the market to everybody. Whether you're a member or not is not relevant. And then, of course, the new energy sources over here. We talked about that. The wind farm, the solar, the hydrogen, the geothermal, all part of the whole story. That's really what Osdu is all about. In addition, we're looking at how to add high-performance computing, because as you know, in certain parts of the subsurface business, APC is very important. And the last one over here I want to talk about is workflows. Because we move into a world where the applications will be very much microservices-based, Kubernetes-based, microservice-based. So how do you create business workflows out of that by using workflow services? Workflow services are not part of the Osdu data platform, part of the gray part, but it's an important component in what we're moving towards, because we're moving from highly integrated applications to microservices, where you use workflow to create integrated services out of that. That's really what we want to talk about. This gives you the overall story around Osdu, where we come from, why did we start it, and bring the data together into a single data platform. Where we are, we're live now with the Osdu Mercury release, subsurface exploration, development of wells, and we're adding production and the new energy sources to it. So it gives you a good overview. And now I hand over to Rush to say, hey, what can you do with all of this? What does it mean to you? So Rush, over to you.
Johan.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Rush, please.
If you can maybe switch to my slides. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, working. Thank you.
So what I wanted to do was to sort of give you a bit of a drill down into the Mercury release. What is the status that we are in? How are operators and suppliers adopting this, and how you can benefit from it in Brazil, right? So as a first step, let me sort of maybe drill down a little bit into that picture that Johan was showing and say how the data flow works, right? So today your data may be in one of the sources shown on the left side, right? So it could be databases, it could be applications, it could be file formats that you're receiving from partners or acquisition vendors. And what we want to be able to do is, because we are putting this in a cloud environment, we need to think about legal issues, compliance issues, security issues. So it needs to go through a proper governance, data is properly tagged, and then it gets ingested into the platform. And the act of ingestion is just bringing the data into the platform so we can do something with it. So certainly discovery is a key problem, like Johan was talking about, being able to search and retrieve your data is a key challenge. So we want to address that. And we will show you some examples of how discovery could look like. And more importantly, when you have so much data that is coming in, you want to be able to enrich the data. So for example, if you've got documents, you may want to classify the documents or extract the text out of it or extract some forms out of it. If you are getting structured data, you may want to transform it, match and merge this to create an authoritative master, etc. And that's the data that we want to deliver to the application. So the applications don't have to worry about what's the source from where the data came in and how the data was curated, how it was made ready for the application to consume. You get reliable data from the Osdu platform. So that's why Johan was talking about this as a system of record and a transactionally sound system that the application can rely on to get the data that is needed for the end users. So with that as sort of the background, what I'll do is I'll maybe give you a few examples of how people are starting to use this platform. So first and foremost, the evolution of a platform comes from adoption, right? So operators are certainly key. You've seen a variant of this slide in Johan's deck as well. So there's a number of operators that have been very instrumental from day one, and a lot of them have actually come into the forum and made presentations about their adoption plans. Equinor, for example, said they're working on their own cloud platform called Omnia, and they said that the platform will be refactored based on the OSDU principles, and they have a clear roadmap for incorporating OSDU into their strategy. Another example would be, just to go from top left to bottom right, Gazprom was another operator that came in and presented their strategy in terms of how they plan to deploy and adopt OSDU for their internal applications. They even talked about how they can contribute back to the community because they bring in not only an NOC perspective, but unique challenges in terms of deployments in country where public cloud infrastructure doesn't exist. So how do you then work out a deployment? So what we get from operators is not only the adoption, but unique perspectives that helps to shape the data platform to what is really needed to be successful, whether it's a large operator or a small operator, an NOC or an independent or a super major. So sort of right size the implementation and the priorities based on what these operators need. Likewise, suppliers are a key part of the ecosystem as well. Like Johan mentioned, there's 200 different members in there, and a good chunk of them are suppliers. So obviously, I can't put an icon for everybody. It's not going to fit into the page. But what I'm showing you here are the vendors that have announced either services or applications around the OSDU Mercury release that went out in March. And you can see that it's a wide spectrum of offerings, all the way from machine learning, AI type of offerings, your physics-based applications and the application connectivity to the data platform, data management, data loading, data curation type of solutions, and of course, SaaS type of solutions. So customers don't have to worry about installs and deployments and upgrades and so on. So for the purposes of the call today, let me jump into one such example. I worked for Schlumberger, so let me take the Schlumberger example, give you a little bit of drill down on what we are working on, how some of key partners like Microsoft, for example, are helping us in the journey to get you high value applications that you can sort of benefit from the platform on the get-go. So Johan mentioned this in his slide as well, a quick visual to sort of illustrate the history of OSDU. It started off with the Shell SDU contribution, but you can see from the R2 release, which was late 2019, early 2020 on, effectively what we've done is we've changed the implementation to use the code contributions that came from Schlumberger. R3 is basically the Mercury release that came out, and that is a continuation of additional contributions. And even going forward, Schlumberger is firmly committed to OSDU, right? So between well construction, subsurface, production, data ecosystem, etc., we've got more than 15 to 20 full-time SMEs that are working on it, and probably another 50 plus developers that are working in the different technology centers that are then contributing into OSDU. So just this year, in terms of all the people that have been working on it, you could imagine more than 40 person years worth of work that has gone into the baseline today. And that's a significant commitment from Schlumberger, right? And I'm highlighting Schlumberger as an example here. A lot of the other suppliers are also stepping up their game, and that's the reason why you saw that big list of applications come into this space, and also to improve the data platform itself. So sort of drilling into how that flow, how that value can be realized, like Johan mentioned, the first thing that you need to do is to think about the data foundation, right? So anything that you build around it depends on a solid foundation. This is the place where the open source implementation comes into play. Production grade OSDU that is deployable in different types of environments, right? So not only in a public cloud type of setting, but also in and hybrid cloud type of setting. The Gazprom example that I gave you is one such. This allows you to deploy and use the data platform wherever you operate, right? And some companies operate in multiple locations, so they may be able to tap into public cloud in one place, but maybe need a hybrid cloud or an in-country cloud in another place. So that gives you a full standards-based open source platform that can receive the data. But then how do you manage the data once the data lands into that space? So that's where the enterprise data management comes in. Think of this as sort of the compete space, the applications that Johan was talking about, right? So whether this is viewing the data, ingesting the data, quality controlling the data, organizing and categorizing the data, making sure that the data is of the right classification and right quality to be able to deliver it to the applications. Then the next question that would come in is, okay, fine, I've got the platform, I've got the tools that can run on top of the platform. How do I bring the data into the platform? And that's where the data integration and curation support comes in. And there are a number of tools that can look at whether it's industry standard file formats or databases and applications, including sort of the applications that you guys may be using and familiar with. For example, Petrel is one such application where we can liberate and bring the data into the data platform in a seamless manner. And once you bring the data and once you're able to curate that data into this data-driven workspace, then you can think about whether bringing this into the current generation applications or building some of the cloud-native workflows that can provide higher levels of scale, higher levels of automation to some of the HPC and the workflow automation bits that Johan was talking about. And more importantly, what this allows you to do is, because you now have a hyperscale data platform, you can supplement what you've traditionally done with physics-based algorithms that are put into the applications by using data-centric insights, right? So whether this is machine learning type of capabilities, to now combine both physics-based insights and database insights so you can make better decisions faster. So that, in short, is the sort of the big picture around OSDU and how you can derive value out of this. So what I want to do is, so far you've seen some slides, and there may be questions around how does this actually work, right? When we talk about cloud and microservices and APIs and data standards and so on, it's one thing to hear about it, but it may be much better to sort of visualize this and see how the system works in practice. So what I'm showing you here is the classification of the data. The first thing that you want to do is, because you may be bringing in data from different places, let's set up a project and say, okay, here I'm working on data that is coming in from New Zealand. Let's define that project space, and then let's zoom into the project space and say, let me bring in some seismic data. And this could be, original SegY format data, or if you're bringing it from applications like Petrel, this could be ZGY type of data. And the first thing that you want to do when you bring in your SegY data is to be able to QC this. Can I look at the parameters of the file? Can I look at the episodic headers? Can I do a quick introspection of the traces themselves? Make sure that the file is good quality, that I can actually take this and then associate this to the corresponding survey. And now effectively what I've done is I've created a load set, right? This is the set of data that I want to load, and I can now go ahead and with a single click ingest that into OSDU. And I can do the same thing when it comes to logs. So here is an example where you see a set of LAS files. And again, because of the governance part that I was showing to you on the first slide, we are specifying what's the security, what's the legal tag, where did the data originate from. And very similar to people who may be familiar with Kanban boards, this is a data ops screen that shows you the maturity of the data that goes from ingestion to curation to delivery. And once the data is in, this is the discovery part, right? This is the enterprise data management application, and where you're able to search, browse, visualize the data that's coming in. And you see the nice faceted search on the left side where different attributes are teased apart. So you can filter by operator, you can filter by field, you can filter by different criteria to select the well that you need. And once you've selected the well, now you can go to all of its children. So in this particular case, we're going to launch the logs, and remember those last files that we loaded. Boom, I can now conveniently visualize this logs and make sure that this is okay. So we also talked about enrichment. So what is enrichment? So here's an example where we are searching for well completion reports, and we found a document. It's one thing to just give back that scanned document or that PDF back, But what is really nice is it has gone ahead and indexed and extracted the text out of all of this. So you can see that even though it is a scanned document, it's able to highlight on the scanned document where the particular search string has appeared. It is also able to bring up just those pages that contain the relevant information rather than the whole 100-page document itself. And when you see a nice table or a form like this, you could click a button and then have that completely extracted out, digitized, and brought into a form, like, for example, in this particular case, Excel. So now you've gone from unstructured into structured, and now you can start to make a lot more sense out of the data from these documents. So that's an example of enrichment in the data platform. Let's look at seismic. So the first seismic data that we loaded, that has now shown up in the OSDU data platform. And by querying the OSDU data platform, you're able to see that seismic survey, the seismic data set, and the same seismic traces. And from here, it's just one more click to say, hey, by the way, now I want to start working with this particular seismic. Let's launch the Petrel project. And the Petrel projects themselves, through the OSDU extensibility, is part of the application DDMS. So you can index that, you can launch the project in context. And what you're seeing is within the project, I can go ahead and select that same WACA survey and the data set that we loaded in the first step, bring that into Petrel. And now, unlike what you may have been doing in the past, where these are just files that are sitting in the file system, you are now streaming the data live from the OSDU data platform. And because we are able to use cloud native storage and parallel streams of access, you would see that this is about 10 times faster, an order of magnitude faster in terms of the amount of seismic data that it can pump into your application than typical, local disk type of activity. And why that's important? It's important not only for visualization activity, but when you look at machine learning, automated fault interpretation, or automated seismic interpretation, and here we are showing you the fault interpretation, all of those extractions are now happening at higher pace, looking at more combinations, just because of the scale that the OSDU data platform brings to you. So what that means is faster access to your data, right? A production grade OSDU data platform that you can rely on. All the heavy lifting is done, and the tools are ready for you to operate the OSDU data platform in a production quality setting. And we seamlessly connect the business users to their data. So effectively, we can go from just physics-based work that we've been doing before to AI that is digitally transforming their workflows and insights that they can create. So that's just a quick walkthrough of what is OSDU and how can I benefit from OSDU from a workflow perspective, right? So all of those capabilities that you saw there in terms of ingestion, enrichment, discovery, data delivery are all enabled by the services that are within the OSDU data platform. So again, to zoom back out, that was just one example from one vendor in this particular case, Schlumberger. Like I said, this is an ecosystem. This is an open source forum. So there are other players that have also integrated their applications. I urge you to visit the osduforum.org, check out some of these vendors. It's there in the marketplace, and you can get more details into what capabilities that they have provided on top of OSDU. And again, just to maybe wrap up with this one slide, you can see where the demos that I showed fit into play. I showed you how you can ingest the data from the different sources, be it files or other sources, into the OSDU platform. I showed you how the discovery, how quickly you can search and how quickly you can bring the information and visualize this. I showed you how the enrichment works with the document example. And I also showed you how the delivery into the application works, right? So effectively what it's doing is it's taking data as a pain and making data as an opportunity, right? So I strongly encourage you to not only be a consumer of OSDU, but also participate in the forum, join the forum. Your contributions are really important, whether you can contribute on the code development side or as an SME in the platform. we're always on the lookout for good, talented people to come and amplify the work that we are doing under the auspices of Open Group. So with that, I'll wrap up here. Thanks for your time, and maybe Claudio, I'll pass it back on to you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Mr. Johan Krebers. Comments from the audience was a masterclass. Thank you very much, because what I love at your end, Raj, was not to use the data as a pain, okay? And this goes directly to the title of our webinar today. We have OSDU as an enabler for digital transformation, and now you are aware why, okay? Make it easy, okay, to share the information. We have some questions I'd like to ask to the audience to send more questions, and despite in Portuguese or in English, we try to translate. So the first question we have is from Mr. Sebastião César Assis Pereira. We could translate this name into English, but we prefer to keep in Portuguese, okay? So the question is, the HPC part of your presentation, Mr. Johan, was a little short, and the comment between brackets, and this was good, okay? So the people, sometimes HPC scares some people, okay? Can you explain more the OSDU resource with HPC, for instance, GPU and parallel I/O for seismic data? Please make your comments, and after that, I would like to complement a little bit.
Okay, thank you much. Yes, I showed very short something about high-performance computing. Why high-performance computing? Because we will need HPC to work with OSDU in a number of areas. You already highlighted the seismic processing piece, of course, and really, when we say the data, the data for OSDU, the data for seismic processing will all end up in OSDU. We have to bring the world of OSDU and HPC for seismic processing much closer together. So that's one element. The other element for HPC is for AI. AI over time also, artificial intelligence, machine learning, over time also needs access to high-performance computing. There's a second element where we want to introduce HPC in the OSDU space. You have the data in the OSDU data platform, but on top of that, you can run AI from an HPC point of view. So it's really both are still work in progress, how to bring the world of HPC and the OSDU data platform closer together.
Thank you. If I could complement a little bit, a couple years ago, this kind of resource was not available easily on the public cloud, okay? So all the suppliers made a lot of investment, mainly because some state-owned company, they have some restriction to go to the cloud. One regulation in Brazil, specifically in Brazil, all the data must be resident in country, and the backup must also be resident in country, and the resource should have a disaster recovery capability, okay? So nowadays, these resources are available as a public resource, a public cloud resource, but if the customer, for any policy, any restriction, wants to keep it in a different level, also are available in country what we call the private cloud, but you are charged exactly like in the public cloud. As soon as you use, as a pace as you go, okay? The other option also available in Brazil from different suppliers, okay, using the speech of SDU, okay? We don't want to lock in you, okay? So you can have the edge computing, okay, with all this capability, including deep learning, machine learning, etc., that you treat your data, and after that, you transfer it to the public cloud, or rather, we say message it, okay? You treat your data, have your results, and can transfer. So these options are new in country, okay? Yeah, for sure, it's available for a long time in Europe and in US, but nowadays it's also available in Brazil. So the next question is from Mr. Igor Jesus. He asked the following: about the drilling automation and drilling equipment vendors like NOV, MHWers, Cameron, are they involved in this effort? Can you comment?
Yeah, I'll start and maybe then Russ will also add to that. So we have within the OSDU, we have a separate program called the DBIS program, and that's really all about the drilling activities. So we have about 40, 50 people involved, purely addressing the integration of the drilling world into the OSDU world. Some of the drilling operators are involved. I do not know I think it's the NWWs, but I'm not 100% sure about the names. But there is a separate activity, and if you want to know more about it, happy to get you more information about it. Also, but there's a separate person driving it in the OSDU forum, a guy called Daryl, really driving the drilling requirements, of the drilling integration into OSDU. So I don't know exactly the operator, but maybe Russ has more information about it. But if not, then we'll get that information, of course. Russ, anything you want to add?
No, best to follow up, Johan. You're absolutely right.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question from Mr. Marcelo Ferreira Zampieri. He mentioned that thanks for the great presentation. And the question, I would address this to Hash, okay? How hard was working with so many companies, working with different units in order to standardize the data? Because the operators, the super majors like Shell, Exxon, Mobil, Petrobras, they imposed the rules and we as a supplier needed to follow up. And you as a supplier sitting down with your competitor, how you answer this question?
Now that's a very good question, right? So interest of full transparency, I was the program management committee lead for the Mercury program, right? So which means all the development and coordinating the development was under my responsibility. And this is one of the challenges, right? So unlike typical organizations where you have the advantage of hierarchy and you can tell the team members what to do, here it's more around influence, right? It's a democratic process. So the way we did this is we separated the definition of the standards to different subcommittees. So subcommittees where you've got people that have architecture background or data definitions background, and they will start working on those artifacts. And when it comes to the execution or the implementation side, we started to collaborate with a number of the providers, whether it's Blueware, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Amazon, etc. And then all the developers would get together and say, all right, so I don't need to worry about the debating of the standard because the standard has been specified and given to me as a draft. How do I then break it down into tasks? And then we go about that. We also spent a lot of time on the governance policies, right? So what happens when 2 people agree to it, but 3 other people don't agree? How do you get into situations where we can make sure that we can still move forward even though we don't have 100% buy-in on things, right? So we introduced things like a lightweight architecture decision record. So anytime that there is one of these decision type of things that we need to do, we will create a GitLab issue. Everybody can review those issues. Everybody can comment on that issue, and then we vote on the issue. And if we find that we have a quorum on the vote, then we move forward. Else we ask the person that's submitting it to make the changes, right? So that's the sort of open transparency, continuous dialogue that ensured that even though people are coming from different suppliers, from different locations, we could bring some sanity into this. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Johan.
No, it's 100% correct. So thanks very much, Raj. Yeah.
Yeah, my comment, I forgot to mention during my explanation in Portuguese that each member that belongs to a forum has the right of 1 vote, despite he represents a super major, LLC, IOC, or it's just one person company, okay? And the result must be by consensus, okay? So you needed to practice, you needed to convince everybody to adopt and to go out with a solution. I think this is very key, is very unique, is very important. In despite of how big you are, how big is the elephant you represent, you is just one. Okay, this is very good. I have a question that probably you cannot answer for our reality, but maybe you can comment in the country where you live. The question is from Mr. Fernando Pelon, is, are governmental petroleum agencies, the regulatory agencies, willing to adopt the OSDU standards?
Let me kick off and okay. Yeah, I have some comments. I have some, Ras will also have comments about that. The experience we have a number of government committees are member of OSDU, like the one in the UK is a member, and some other ones. So they are looking at whether, if and how they can adopt the OSDU standard for storing their natural resources information as well. There's one example I'm familiar with. I also know that Norway is looking into something, but maybe, Ras, you might have other examples.
Yeah, those are good examples, right? So whether this is Norway with Discos or UK with CDA, these guys are wholeheartedly embracing OSDU to the point where their future upgrades of the technology stack, they are requiring that suppliers ensure that there is an OSDU compatibility. Because at the end of the day, what is really important to them is the adoption of their data into the application landscape, and they know OSDU is sort of the vehicle that will streamline a lot of this. There's also discussions that's going on in Australia and other NDCs, National Data Centers. So the interest is not just limited to these two.
Thank you. We have a question from Mr. Carlos Eiffel. The core idea of OSDU is cloud architecture, and the amount of data, and I cannot pronounce this, is SEGY. Data is huge. That uses of VDS and OpenVDS format sounds like a great solution to lower costs and speedy transfer. Is that right?
Yeah, so maybe let me take this, Johan. Yes, that is a good point, right? So there are a couple of options that you can do. So certainly when we try to serve the seismic data into the applications, we don't want to have to keep parsing the SEGY, right? SEGY is the high fidelity format in which you receive the data, but reorganizing the data in more optimized formats is the way to go. And as part of that, if we can also employ compression, which is what VDS does or OpenVDS Plus does, what that allows you to do is to gain some cost savings in terms of the overall storage when you bring this into the cloud. And if you're using, for example, applications like Petrel, and you have data already in Petrel formats, then you don't even need to do any conversion. The CGY format is also open source now, so that's part of OpenCGY. And all of that is served by a single seismic DDMS, a seismic domain data management service that is part of the OSDU data platform.
Thank you. Now we have a question or an advice, okay, from Mr. Gabriel Serrão. The question is, how long do you think it will take to have OSDU as a real standard for operators and service providers? Meaning, when all software from different companies will communicate seamlessly. Okay, so this is more an advice than a question, okay, coming from Gabriel Serrão.
Yeah, let me give some comments, and also I'm sure also Ras will have a number of comments. Of course, you can't wait forever. So it is really where it's important for software companies to start thinking about how to start making their software available for OSDU, to really focus the application piece. And also, of course, the operators need to really think through their strategy, how to move from today's world to an OSDU world. But of course, it will take many years if you talk about the total portfolio. So you really need to focus at what are the important parts of your portfolio, first want to make available. So there's no clear answer to this. It depends on every company will be different. Small, large companies, what is your portfolio? What do you want to do? How fast or how slow do you want to go? Or is any comments from your end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's also not a point in time, right? So Makatu, his point, he's asking as if we could specify a point in time, but we need to think about this as an evolution journey, right? Are we able to point the point in time when we moved from coal-based transportation to hydrocarbon-based transportation, or when is the electrical automobiles taking over? It's not a single point, right? 5 years ago, we would have said a different answer. Now we would say, yes, the electric cars are firmly entrenched. And maybe 10, 15 years from now, we would basically say, yes, we are already there, right? So it's sort of that bell curve of establishing the critical mass. And certainly OSDU is in its on-ramp. Let's be very clear about that. But what is very clear is that the adoption, whether this be from the operators or the suppliers or the providers, is quite high, right? I mean, the membership angle is one that clearly shows the interest in there. So to me, it's just a matter of time as you start to see the center of gravity shifting from these fragmented spaces into OSDU.
My humble opinion is the following: when the majority adopt, become a real standard, not by law, by statement, or imposed by someone else. And if you wanted to play the game, you needed to play the game following the rules of the game. Okay, so the people follow the leaders. Thank you. I have a question from Mr. Patricio Ceballos. I don't know if you're familiar with the acronyms, but I'll just repeat the question. Okay, OSDU seems very similar to the PPDM's objectives and principles. How is OSDU similar and different from PPDM's efforts and deliverables?
Raj, you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Right. So the key difference here, guys, is it is fully open source, right? So for you to be able to use the OSDU outputs, you don't even need to be a member, right? So if you go to community.opengroup.org/OSDU, you find all of the services, the code, the data models, the associated published standards, everything accessible, right? And we firmly believe, like you were saying, Claudia, that it doesn't matter whether you're a big company, a small company, a freelance independent person, you should still be able to access these artifacts and use this, right? So that to me is what is different about OSDU, that it fully democratizes what we've done, makes it available to everybody. And where it is similar and where we are very closely working with PPDM is there's no point in reinventing the wheel. And PPDM has done a great job in terms of the data models and, more importantly, the usage rules when it comes to the data. And PPDM is now one of the members, and we're working very closely with them. And you will start to see not only the reflections of the models that are coming into some of the data model discussions in OSDU, but more importantly, the usage rules coming in and getting codified into the data platform as well. Johan, did you have...
No, and another very important stand, of course, that the OSDU, we go for operational solutions you can implement. And of course, PPDM is very much focused at standards, providing clear standards, which are, as Raj said, very important to us, very important as input. But our goal always is an operational capability you can use, you can implement, and run your business on.
Thank you. We have a question from Laura Mastella. Is the first lady ask a question? We need more ladies in this game. Huh? How to maintain the integration between software of various service providers? What if an API libraries are customized? Will the consortium or forum continue to guarantee this uniformity?
You want to kick off for us?
Yeah, sure. This one may be more ideal for you.
No, I have the answers. Yeah. Yeah. It is first. Let's talk about the important APIs. First, the important APIs are fully owned by the OSDU forum. Yeah. So if you're talking about access to the data platform, you have APIs for that, as we explained in our presentation. Those are fully maintained, supported by the forum. So a user or any user does not have access to those APIs. Yeah, so they're fully maintained by the forum, and therefore the forum has to make sure that they always backwards compatible wherever they are. So those APIs, access to the data platform, we do not leave to an individual to tamper with, because the moment you do that, of course, you lose it. So that's really our overall our overall focus. And of course, these APIs are fairly important. There could be other APIs within your own application. Of course, that's up to you. But the moment you start talking about touching the APIs of the data platform, the forum is accountable and has to make sure that they are also are the same across each of the implementation across the IBM, the Microsoft, the Google, and other implementations. They all have to be the same.
Harsh, you want to complement?
Yeah, sure. Maybe just one more point there on that, right? So how do we verify all this, right? We do two things. One is as part of the deliverable that the cloud providers get from the community baseline, we make sure that all of their deployments are tested after they have packaged it and they can deploy it into their own backends. We take that, put it back into the community, and we have a bunch of operators and suppliers that are volunteering to test the platform. And that's what ensures what Johan was saying, that it doesn't matter whether I'm on AWS or Azure or on Google or IBM, I get the same behavior across. And the second one that we're doing is we are coming up with a certification program and a validation suite behind it. So you as an operator can basically say, hey, I'm going to get an OSDU from provider X, and I'm going to get an application from supplier Y, and I know that I can mix and match those two because the environment that I'm working against is passing all of those certifications.
Thank you. We have another lady, Daisy Patterson, asking the following. I don't know if you have this question because it's particular to Brazil. What is approximately the percent of Brazilian onshore and offshore data already included in OSDU platform? I don't imagine that you have this answer.
We won't really know. I mean, you would have to go to people like Petrobras and say what are they doing with OSDU, because those are the people, or Shell, whoever operates in the Brazilian offshore business. Those are the people who put the data into the OSDU data platform. I know that Petrobras has an OSDU implementation for one of their fields, so they are doing work in this space, but I have no idea about what data has been moved into that space.
Okay, as to do after this meeting, I promise to jump on this challenge here and try to, in a couple of weeks, to answer. My opinion is most of the OSDU platform today is filled with offshore data, not onshore. Okay, but it's my guess. I will double check with our colleagues from Petrobras. So the last question is from Arthur Furtado. How would be the pricing rationale for this open space common data community? I don't know if you're able to answer that, or you needed to address to Mr. Severo from the Open Group, the country manager for Open Group in Brazil.
Well, the way it all works, of course, first, it's open source software, so you don't really pay for the open source software itself. But of course, the software will be installed by one of the 4 cloud providers. It depends who you are. So you can expect that they will charge you a fee to install and configure that software. And of course, the OSDU data platform services. And of course, once you have to run in the cloud, you have to pay for the usage of the cloud storage and cloud CPU cycles. So you have to pay for the implementation by the cloud provider and maybe ongoing support if you want to do that. And of course, for the usage of the cloud CPU cycles and storage capabilities. And you might want help from an integrator. You might say, hey, I want some help to migrating all the data to the OSDU data platform. I want to do other things. Then you might want to get the help of Schlumberger, other companies, to help you moving your existing environment into an OSDU data platform.
Harsh, any comment?
Yeah, so maybe one more comment, right? So that's from a consumption standpoint, right? But let's say you want to contribute to OSDU and you have some ideas, or you want to work on the code or something like that. Any code that you want to develop, you can register for free and you can start to submit your code, and we can review and accept that. If you want to participate in the development of the standards, like you want to change or define the architecture, the security model, the business model, the data definitions, etc., Then you need to sign up for a membership to the forum. And there is a annual sustainability fees. It's a very nominal fee that we use to make sure that we can recoup the costs of running the forum and the definition of the standards themselves.
Thank you. So we are close to the end. We have no more questions. Again, I would like to thank you, Raj and Mr. Johan Kravers, for your availability. Now is more than midnight in your country, Mr. Johan Kravers.
Yes, it is.
And we're sorry for that. I promise, and I will transfer this responsibility for all our committee of digital transformation. Next time, Raj and Johan Kravers are back in Rio, we'll buy the caipirinhas, okay? Thank you very much. And for the audience, thanks for coming to join us for this moment. I hope you love it, because I love it to learn more about OSDU. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.